isn't it? Good morning.
Good morning.
This season, is this season getting anyone else like it's getting me right now? I've had a very strange and noisy couple of weeks. A lot of good things. Been doing the show Annie. Got to help with Clip Art's Little Mermaid. That was great. Advent and Christmas, good stuff. Some not so good things. We've been quietly searching for some mystery health answers with my daughter for a couple of years, and crisis this week led to some more really good questions and no answers. I was contemplating leaving town with my family for a few days after Christmas, and then I had nightmares for 3 days running about leaving my elderly dad for when he needed help that somehow my subconscious brain thought only I could give. In the midst of these things that are kind of depleting my emotional reservoir, I'm finding too that old griefs are kind of hitting me at times when I don't even expect it. Strange times, like a couple weeks ago we sang this great classic Christmas anthem in choir, and it got to me. And then I remembered that I had sung it for the first time with my first voice teacher, who passed away in 1984. 84! 35 years ago! And still, it almost makes me laugh as it makes me cry, because it hit me like he died today. Does that ever happen to you? There's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of noise and updates and information and news. And so in that noise, I invite you to watch the video screen. Friedrich Buchner writes in his book, Telling the Truth, that before the gospel is good news, it's just news. Sometimes it's the minutiae of my days, and maybe yours too, the sudden joy or the sudden wave of grief, the reality of getting up every morning to do tasks at home or school or work. It's that moment when we peer through the fog and we wonder what's out there. Is there something more? Maybe some days it's the news on CNN, but with the sound turned off. So there's nothing to distract us from the grim and gritty and sometimes sad reality of the world we live in. Before the Word becomes flesh, there's silence. Not empty silence. Tool fog silence. Snowfall silence. 9 months and 2 days pregnant silence. Lying awake at 3 a.m. silence. And so we wait for God to speak. In the story that the disciple Matthew tells, many crowds have followed Jesus from all of Syria and Galilee and Decapolis and Jerusalem and Judea and beyond the Jordan. The noise of the whole world is nipping at his heels, and he sees them all. But he goes up the mountain and he sits down. And he waits for his disciples to come to him. And then Matthew writes, and in some versions it's translated, he opened his mouth and taught them. It's almost as if all he does is open his mouth and the words fall out. He can hardly wait to tell them. Because this stuff, this is why he's here. This is what he gets really, really excited about. He's going to tell them who has his blessing. And in the mindset of the ancient world, this is a loaded word. It's about who has his legacy, who will carry his inheritance, who will keep him alive through passed down DNA and values, who's the very closest to his heart and why. Have you ever seen somebody talk about someone that they really, really love? A spouse or a child or a significant other or a very, very best friend. Their eyes kind of light up, right? And they can't help smiling as they seem to just pour everything they have into this person that they love and into the story about them that they're sharing. Well, I imagine in this moment that Jesus' eyes light up just like that. And he tells his disciples, you know those people that are poor in spirit? Well, they've been beat down by the world and by life and by the morning news shows so much that they don't feel like they have a voice at all. And if they did, they don't know what they'd say anyway. And they're trying hard to figure out how they're going to get up in the morning and put one foot in front of another for another day. They're just the best, aren't they? My kingdom is theirs. Everything I have, I would give them freely. And if I had more, I'd give that too. Oh, and people in grief, the ones that they get the Christmas ornaments out and they have to sit and cry for just a moment before they put them up on the tree. The ones who pick up the phone to share some good news with somebody that, well, they forgot they were gone for just a moment. The ones who get bowled over by a piece of music they sang 35 years ago. Well, I'm going to wrap myself around those people like a blanket fresh out of the dryer. And they're going to cry while I hold them. And when they feel a little better, they're probably going to wipe their noses on my shoulder. And I'm going to love them so much that I'll probably cry a little bit too. There are other people I get really excited about. I mean, really, have you seen people who lay down their power and their pride for the sake of others? That's amazing. Every time. Those kids of mine, they're going to get all my worldly goods. How about the people who just want everyone to live in a better place? The ones that want all of my children to be treated fairly and will go ahead and take risks for that. They'll get their hands and their feet and their faces dirty because they want to be where I am so much they're starving for it. That makes me feel pretty great. So they might seem to give it all, but I'm going to fill them up, and they're going to be the most satisfied. How about the ones that are told that they should seek revenge, but instead they show mercy? I don't care how tiny or how gigantic their mess-ups are. I'm going to show them how good it feels to receive mercy. Oh, and if they can love with a pure heart without getting anything in return, you know, those people the relatives get mad at and their friends say are a little crazy and they're going to regret how generous they are. Well, when they give from that pure, unselfish place, I'm going to be right there with them, so close that they can see me. And if they can add the smallest bit of peace to the trouble around them, well, they're not just going to see me, but I'm going to claim them as mine, and they're going to be like my siblings. And then, in my imagination, Jesus might get a little bit sad because he knows things aren't always going to go well for people who live like that. And he tells his disciples that when they stand up to the bullies, when they protect the people that he loves, when they look like fools because they're willing to take the consequences of standing up to the status quo that loves revenge and war and anger, he's going to be there. It's only going to be for a little while, and then he'll be so proud. And he'll bring them home and they'll have his blessing forever. When Jesus spoke about all of those blessings to his disciples, there was even another layer in that rich word. And they might have heard that. Because a blessing in the ancient world was also a blessing of peace, of shalom. That Hebrew word shalom was a word for peace, but it's so much bigger than that. We sometimes think of peace as the absence of conflict, right? The end of war, the end of anger. Remember how I said I'd had a strange and noisy couple of weeks? Well, some days that's been literal noise. Last Tuesday, I was on my way here kind of early, and at the intersection of Lover's Lane and Walnut, there's this truck that starts honking. And it's kind of a weird, not quite connected, spluttery honk. But then, once it got going, it didn't stop. I turned into the lane behind him, and I watched the angry stares and the shouts that were silenced by closed windows and the middle fingers he received in the next couple of intersections. And I kind of wondered what would need to happen in the world for that anger to not be so close to the surface. And maybe for people to think first, his horn must be broken. I longed for an absence of conflict for this poor driver who was the recipient of so much random rage. But the biblical understanding of peace, or shalom, it's far more than just the absence of conflict or strife. Shalom is the presence of the goodness of God. It's the presence of wholeness and completeness. Maybe that's the kind of peace that we're looking for after silence. When Jesus says, "Blessed are," well, that's the good news of the gospel that we're waiting for. That's a restoration of shalom. When God created the world, God declares that everything is good. And that includes humans, who God said were very good. It's sin that disrupts our natural state of peace and wholeness and connection to God. And Jesus calls us, the church, his followers, back to experience what we're supposed to be, co-creators, participators of love and peace and restoration and mercy and wholeness. Jesus shows us in his litany of blessings what the restoration of shalom looks like. It's not a list of commands. It's more an autobiography of what the work of God through Jesus Christ looks like in the world. And if we, the church, are the body of Christ in the world, well, then it's our autobiography too. Peacemakers, working to build the kind of world that will endure rather than one that will self-destruct. It's true that you and I, we don't come to this place blank, and not to this place in the history of the world blank any more than we come into the world blank. There's generations of the body of Christ in us. And some of those generations have disrupted shalom more than they've restored it. And some have resisted restoration actively. In some ways, peace for the church that will enable us to fulfill our mission means looking honestly at how the sin of disruption has crept into even us, slowing down enough to name it and wonder what it might look like to be free from it. Because we don't always get it right. Not as individuals and not as a community of faith. But inside that, God calls us to be blessed, to be transformed by a grace that is right here and right now. In our moments of clarity where the gospel shines clearly from us, and in our lostness and oddness and inability to get it right, Jesus comes to announce to his church, you are loved, you are mine, you are me, and you carry me with you into the world. Those are big thoughts. It's a big responsibility. And in some ways, they're thoughts so big so full of awe and wonder and complexity that if we live there, we can get tangled up in them. But that's okay. Because ultimately, Jesus Christ is not a thought or an idea that we as a church or as his followers ponder and intellectually understand, but a person that we say yes to. That yes, with whatever we have and whatever we don't have, because in that yes to mercy, the yes to peacemaking, the yes to hungering and thirsting for justice, and that yes to following Jesus, and the infuriatingly stubborn conviction that no matter how dark the world, or how long the silence, or how much the noise, the tomb is actually empty. In that yes, we, the church, will find our peace, our shalom, and our restoration. And I think that we'll find our blessing as those who are called to carry on Jesus' legacy in the world. Amen.
Amen.
And as just the first bit of that restoration, may the peace of Christ be with you all.
And also with you.
Please rise and share that peace.